My friends, let us come together for a moment of deep honesty. Not honesty with the world, not honesty with the mind, but honesty with the self. For every one of us knows the experience of anxiety not as an occasional visitor, but as something the human mind believes it must endure, protect against, and somehow learn to escape. And yet, I would like you to understand at the outset that anxiety is not caused by the world, nor by conditions, nor by the actions of others. Anxiety has no source in circumstance. It is born only of one thing: the belief that your life, your safety, your well-being, your future exist outside of your own consciousness. When we imagine that our security lies in money, we fear when money shifts. When we imagine it lies in the body, we tremble when the body changes. When we believe it lies in the approval of others, we become restless when their moods or judgments waver. And so the human mind spends its days chasing safety in that which cannot be stable, cannot be permanent, and cannot provide what it promises. In this way, anxiety is not a sign of spiritual weakness. It is simply the natural result of seeking life where life does not live. I say to you, therefore, that the first great realization of our time together is this: anxiety is the shadow that appears the moment we forget the kingdom within. It is the inevitable sensation that arises when consciousness seems distant, unknown, untrusted. And so the human mind struggles and fights and prays and begs, hoping that the outer world will become peaceful enough to quiet the inner storm. But the outer world has no duty to give you peace. It cannot. It has no power of its own. Peace comes only from the recognition of what is eternally present within you. In the infinite way, we do not attempt to fix anxiety. We do not wrestle with it. We do not seek to overpower it with positive thought or mental effort. Instead, we look gently, quietly, into the truth behind it. That anxiety is nothing more than a sign that we are seeking in the wrong direction. It tells us we have momentarily forgotten who and what we are. And so, instead of trying to repair the mind, we return to the source. We turn within. We begin to recognize that the peace we long for is not something to be added to us. It is something that has been present since before fear ever arose. Let us enter this class with a simple intention: to see anxiety for what it is, and then to meet it, not with force, not with resistance, but with the quiet authority of truth. For as you will discover, one moment of inner recognition dissolves more fear than a lifetime of outward striving. In a little while, I will show you a simple practice, 3 minutes only, that restores the awareness of the kingdom and reveals the peace already established in your being. But let us not hurry. Peace is never found in haste. For now, let this be the beginning. You are not at the mercy of anxiety. You are at the doorway of the kingdom, and the kingdom has never left you. Now let us look more deeply into this thing we call anxiety, not as the world sees it, not as psychology attempts to manage it, but as it is understood in spiritual consciousness. For unless we know the nature of a thing, we cannot rightly respond to it. The world tells you that anxiety is personal, that it belongs to you, arises from you, and must be corrected by you. But I say to you, anxiety is not personal, it is not individual, and it has no inherent connection to your identity. Anxiety is a universal suggestion, a passing influence upon the human mind when it believes itself separate from its source. In the infinite way, we recognize this. There is no individual mind apart from God's mind. There is only one consciousness, one presence, one life, and whenever the appearance of a separate mind arises, whenever there is the sense of I apart, then fear, doubt, and anxiety begin to take form. But they are not born of truth, they are born of illusion. They arise only in the dimming of the inner light. You may think, but this anxiety feels so real, so powerful. Yes, it appears real. But do you remember the principle we have spoken of so often? No appearance has power. All power is in the invisible. Anxiety, like any appearance, is a shadow cast upon consciousness when one forgets the presence of the infinite. It has no substance of its own, no intelligence, no authority. It is not a message from God, nor a sign of danger. It is simply the whisper of the mortal sense. And so we do not struggle with anxiety. We do not condemn it. We do not attempt to cure it by rearranging the outer world. We do not say, if only this condition would change, I would no longer fear. For that is to give power to the very thing that has no power. That is to feed the illusion. Let us understand something vital. Anxiety is not your failing. Anxiety is the mind's attempt to survive without the awareness of God. It cannot succeed. It was never meant to. When the mind is disconnected from the felt presence of the infinite, it tries to anticipate, to control, to predict, to guard itself. This is the origin of restlessness, of tension, of worry. The mind fears because it believes it is alone. It fears because it thinks it must protect an existence separate from God. But you are not separate. You are not divided from your source. You are not living as an isolated being struggling through a dangerous world. You are living as consciousness itself, and consciousness is neither anxious nor afraid. When you begin to see anxiety not as a personal condition but as the effect of temporary forgetfulness, then already it begins to lose its hold. When you realize that anxiety is nothing more than the mind operating without the awareness of its foundation, you stop fighting it. You stop diagnosing it. You stop condemning yourself for it. Instead, you remember the one simple truth that dissolves fear. God is the life of me. The presence of God is my consciousness. And in that remembrance, the roots of anxiety begin to loosen. Soon we will come to the practice itself, the gentle turning within that restores your awareness of truth. But not yet. Let us take one more step, for before you can release fear, you must see clearly why seeking solutions in the outer world will never free you. Now, let us take the next step in our understanding. If anxiety is the result of forgetting the presence within, then it naturally follows that any attempt to ease anxiety by adjusting the outer world will only deepen the forgetfulness. This is the great tragedy of human experience, the belief that safety, peace, or freedom can be attained through manipulation of external conditions. My friends, it has never been so, and it will never be so, because the outer world is not the cause of your experience, it is the effect. We have been trained since childhood to run outward for comfort. When the body speaks, we rush to remedies. When money tightens, we run to calculation and effort. When relationships shake, we run to explanations, demands, and strategies. And when the mind trembles, we believe something in the world must change before peace can return. But in all this, do you see what we are unknowingly declaring? We are declaring that the world has power, power to comfort us, power to disturb us, power to determine our well-being. And the moment we grant power to the world, we give fear its foundation. Fear lives by the belief that something outside you can harm you, and that something outside you must save you. The more you chase the outer world for answers, the louder fear becomes. The more you try to secure yourself through material forms, the more unstable they appear. The more you expect others to be your peace, the more fragile your sense of peace becomes. And so the human being runs from one appearance to the next, momentarily relieved when circumstances shift, but trembling again the moment they shift back. Do you see the pattern? It is endless. It has no resolution. For the appearance world cannot grant what it does not possess. Let me share with you a principle of the infinite way. Nothing in the visible realm has power neither to bless nor to harm. All power is in the invisible presence that lives within you. When this principle is forgotten, the mind panics. When it is remembered, fear dissolves. Whenever you seek security through money, you've already placed the kingdom second. Whenever you seek peace through ideal conditions, you've already made the appearance the cause and consciousness the effect. And whenever you attempt to calm anxiety by changing the world, you inadvertently strengthen the belief that the world controls your well-being. This is why seeking solutions outside yourself intensifies fear, not because the world is unkind, but because you are asking it to do what only God can do. In the infinite way, we stop this fruitless search. We stop trying to rearrange the shadows. We stop giving power to the unstable. Instead, we turn in humility, in trust, in quiet recognition, to the only place where peace exists, the kingdom within. And when you understand this principle, even intellectually at first, the heart begins to soften. Fear loosens its grip, for you realize you have been looking in the wrong direction, not sinfully, not foolishly, but ignorantly, under the belief that the outer world contains your good, but your good is not in the world. Your good is in your consciousness. Soon we will enter the 3-minute practice that returns you to this inner sanctuary. But before we do, let us understand clearly what the kingdom is, what peace actually is, so that when you turn within, you know precisely what you are recognizing. Let us now turn to this great truth that lies at the very center of the infinite way, the truth spoken by the Master when he said, "The kingdom of God is within you." These words have been repeated for 2,000 years, and yet their meaning has been almost entirely overlooked, not because they are obscure, but because the human mind insists on searching everywhere except where the truth is. When Jesus spoke of the kingdom, he was not referring to a future heaven, nor to a realm reached after death, nor to a place reserved for the virtuous. He spoke of a state of consciousness, a living presence, an inner atmosphere in which all fear is dissolved because no separation is known there. He spoke of the very essence of your being, spirit, awareness, life itself. Now, hear me well. The kingdom is not something you will enter. It is something you are already living in, even when you do not recognize it. Peace is not something to acquire. Peace is not something to achieve. Peace is not something to create through practice, discipline, or mental effort. Peace is the nature of the kingdom, and the kingdom is the nature of your being. When you feel anxiety, you are not lacking peace. You are simply unaware of the peace that is already present. This is why the outer world cannot give you peace. This is why personal will cannot produce peace. This is why the mind cannot manufacture peace. For peace is not a product. Peace is presence. Peace is the revelation of what eternally is. In the infinite way, we do not work to bring peace into being. We work to remove the belief that peace is absent. We do not practice to add anything to ourselves. We practice to become still enough to see what has been true from the beginning. There is a vast difference between seeking peace and recognizing peace. Seeking peace implies that peace is somewhere else. Recognition reveals that peace is here. If you were to dive beneath the turbulence of the ocean's surface, you would find a calm, motionless depth, untouched by storms. In the same way, Beneath the surface agitation of the mind, there is a depth of presence, quiet, eternal, undisturbed. This depth is the kingdom. And when you touch it, even for a moment, anxiety loses all authority. Therefore, the purpose of the 3-minute practice is not to change your emotions, nor to silence your thoughts, nor to manipulate your state. Its purpose is to bring you into conscious contact with this inner depth, this invisible presence, this kingdom that is the only reality of your being. When you turn within, even for a brief moment, you do not create anything. You uncover, you unveil, you step back into the awareness of what has always been yours. The kingdom is not a mystical concept. It is the living presence of God within you. It is the stillness that preceded your first breath, that remains with you now, and that will be with you when the body falls away. It is the one truth that cannot change, and when your attention returns to it, peace flows naturally, effortlessly, because peace is the atmosphere of the divine. Now that you understand where peace truly lives, we are ready to enter the practice that restores your awareness of it. But we must approach this practice quietly, reverently, knowing that we are not attempting to make something happen, but allowing something already present to reveal itself. And so now, let us move gently into the heart of our work, the 3-minute turning within, the simple recognition that dissolves fear by awakening you to the kingdom. And now, my friends, let us come to the heart of this work, not a method, not a ritual, but a quiet inner turning that restores you to the awareness of the kingdom. I call it a practice only because the mind understands that word. But let us be very clear. This is not a technique for producing peace. It is simply the recognition of peace already established within you. Nothing will be added. Nothing will be taken away. You are merely becoming aware of what has eternally been true. This entire practice may take no more than 3 minutes, yet even in 3 minutes, the consciousness of truth can dissolve an entire lifetime of fear, not because the words have power, not because the steps have power, but because God is the only power, and in recognition of that fact, all illusion loses its strength. Let us begin gently. Step 1, be still. Sit quietly, wherever you are. There is no posture to maintain, no breath to control, no atmosphere to create. Simply allow yourself to rest. Let the body be. Let the thoughts be. Let the emotions be. You do not need to improve this moment. You do not need to prepare yourself. Peace does not require preparation. Peace is here. Do not attempt to silence the mind, only notice that you are the one aware of the mind. Even if thoughts move quickly, even if emotions stir, you need not interfere. Stillness does not mean the absence of movement. It means you are not disturbed by whatever moves. Step 2, turn within. Gently, without effort, bring your attention inward, not downward into the body, not upward into the mind, simply inward, into the quiet space of awareness. It is as though you were listening not for a sound, but for an inner presence. A presence you have always known but have neglected to acknowledge. Do not strain. Do not reach. Turning within is as simple as remembering that God is here. Step 3, acknowledge the presence. Now, with the same ease with which you would greet a dear friend, silently recognize the truth. I and the Father are one. Not as an affirmation you are trying to believe, but as a statement of fact, acknowledgement, recognition, awareness, and then, perhaps, the kingdom of God is within me. God is the life of my being. Let these words be soft. Let them be natural. They are not meant to convince the mind, they are meant to reveal what the mind cannot see. Step 4, rest in awareness. Now, allow the words to dissolve, like mist in the morning sun. Do not hold to them. Do not repeat them. Do not attempt to stay in any particular state. Simply rest. Rest in the awareness that something greater than thought is here. Rest in the recognition that you are not alone in your own mind. You are living in God, and God is living as you. There is no need to force silence. Silence reveals itself when effort ceases. It may come as a sense of peace, or as a subtle warmth, or perhaps as nothing noticeable at all. Do not measure the experience. The presence is not dependent on your feelings. The presence simply is. Step 5, let peace reveal itself. In this quiet recognition, anxiety loses its foundation, for anxiety depends upon your belief in separation. It depends upon your belief that you must protect yourself, defend yourself, secure your future, or heal your own life. But here, in this awareness, you begin to see that there is only one life, and it is not threatened. There is only one presence, and it has no opposite. There is only one power, and it is not fear. This realization need not be dramatic. Often it is gentle, subtle, like the soft rising of dawn, but its effect is profound. And so, for these few minutes, you have done nothing, not mentally, not emotionally, not spiritually. You have merely stepped aside and allowed truth to be what it is. You have remembered the kingdom, and fear cannot survive remembrance. 3 minutes, that is all. But if you truly rest in this recognition, even for a moment, something within you shifts. Not because you have accomplished anything, but because you have ceased to stand in the way of what is already true. Just is, now that you have experienced this inner turning, let us look together at what actually happens in consciousness during these moments. For understanding this will deepen your trust in the practice and allow the transformation to unfold more fully. Now, my friends, let us look gently and clearly at what truly occurs in consciousness during these few minutes of turning within. For if you understand the nature of this inner shift, you will cease to wonder whether the practice is working, and you will begin to trust the invisible activity of the spirit that operates far deeper than thought or feeling. When you become still, when you turn inward, when you acknowledge the presence, not with effort, not with emotion, but with quiet recognition, something begins to take place that the mind cannot observe and the senses cannot measure. It is not something you do. It is something that is done in you. Let me explain. 1. The sense of a separate self begins to dissolve. In these moments of inner recognition, the belief that you are a solitary being, living apart from God, begins to weaken. You may not notice it at first. It may not feel dramatic, but the subtle tension that arises from trying to live as a self apart starts to fall away, and with it, fear loses its foundation. For all fear is born of separation. All anxiety is the echo of isolation, and isolation is an illusion. When you turn within, you gently step out of that illusion. 2. Fear's authority dwindles because its root is exposed. Fear cannot survive in the presence of truth. It can only survive when you forget who you are, when you acknowledge the kingdom. You are not fighting fear, you are simply remembering reality. In the light of remembrance, fear becomes what it always was, a shadow without substance. Do not be concerned if fear appears to continue for a time. Shadows often remain even after the sun has risen. but they have lost their power. 3. The mind slows because it is no longer fed by resistance. The human mind races only when it believes it must take responsibility for its own life. It churns, it plots, it anticipates, it defends. But the moment you enter the awareness of the presence, the burden of self-preservation is lifted. The mind does not stop because you force it. It becomes quiet because it recognizes it is no longer needed as guardian of your existence. When the mind ceases striving, peace naturally rises. 4. A subtle awareness of presence emerges. You may not feel anything dramatic. You may not see light, hear words, or experience sudden peace. That is not the goal. But there will be, often very quietly, a sense that something is here, something stable, something gentle, something that does not change when thoughts change. This is the beginning of conscious union. This is the awareness of the kingdom. It may feel like a softening in the chest, a loosening of tension, a quiet knowing without knowing, a sense of being carried, or simply the absence of strain. Do not look for any of these. Do not measure your experience. Presence is not discovered through sensation, it is recognized through awareness. 5. The spiritual atmosphere shifts within you even if you feel nothing. My friends, please hear this well. Your feelings are not the measure of spiritual progress. The Spirit does its work in silence. The presence acts in the unseen. Grace moves beneath the surface of thought. You may finish the practice believing nothing has occurred, and yet within an hour you will notice that the problem that tormented you no longer grips you with the same intensity. You will observe that your responses are calmer, your breath easier, your thoughts less urgent. This is not psychological improvement. This is the activity of truth revealing itself. One moment of genuine recognition has more healing power than a lifetime of mental effort. 6. You begin to live from the inside out. With each practice, consciousness slowly shifts from the belief that conditions determine experience to the awareness that experience flows from consciousness. You stop looking outward for safety. You stop seeking solutions in matter. You stop reacting to circumstances as if they held power. You begin to live from within. And from within, all things become harmonious because consciousness itself becomes harmonious. This, my friends, is what happens in these 3 minutes. Not because you have done anything, but because you have finally allowed what is to be seen. And so now that you understand the inner activity of these moments, let us turn to a very practical matter. How to use this practice throughout your day, particularly in those moments when anxiety arises most strongly and you believe you must act immediately. For it is not enough to practice only in stillness. You must learn to turn within in the midst of life itself. Now, my friends, let us turn from the stillness of the quiet room to the movement of daily life. For it is one thing to recognize the kingdom in meditation, and it is another to recognize it in the midst of activity, responsibility, and the demands of the world. Yet this is precisely where the practice becomes most transformative, not as an escape from life, but as the foundation upon which life is lived. You see, the purpose of this 3-minute turning within is not merely to bring you moments of peace, it is to train your awareness to remember the presence before the mind reacts, before fear arises, before the appearance convinces you that it has power. Gradually, this recognition becomes your natural response, your first instinct, your quiet habit of trust. Let us explore how this unfolds in the ordinary circumstances of everyday living. When money anxiety arises, perhaps you are about to check your bank account, open a bill, or confront a financial obligation that seems larger than your resources. Notice how quickly the mind tightens, how swiftly it begins to calculate, to fear, to doubt. In that very moment, pause. Just pause. You do not need a long meditation. You do not need to fix the situation. You need only remember. The kingdom is my supply. God alone is the source of my abundance. This recognition loosens fear's grip. You approach the situation not as a needy individual, but as one who knows the infinite is the substance of being. When the body speaks and fear rises, perhaps a symptom appears, a discomfort, a sudden sensation that awakens old memories or fears. Again, pause not to diagnose, not to resist, not to project outcomes. Pause only long enough to remember. God is the life of my body. Spirit is the law of my being. In this recognition, the body ceases to be an enemy. The symptom loses its authority, and you respond from peace rather than panic. When relationships stir emotion or conflict, a word is spoken, a tone is heard, a misunderstanding arises, and suddenly the heart contracts. Notice it, acknowledge it, and then quietly turn within, not to justify, not to defend, not to judge, simply to remember. Only love has power here. The presence in me is the presence in them. This dissolves reaction. It ends the cycle of hurt and counter-hurt. It restores harmony not by effort but by recognition. When overthinking begins its spiral, perhaps you lie in bed and the mind begins to race. Perhaps you walk through your day and the mind anticipates 100 outcomes. Perhaps a single worry repeats itself with relentless persistence. Do not fight these thoughts. Do not chase them away. Simply say within, thought is not my master. Consciousness is my foundation. And return gently to the kingdom. The mind quiets, not because you subdue it, but because you no longer empower it with fear. When crisis erupts unexpectedly, life may present moments that feel urgent, overwhelming, or deeply unsettling. A sudden loss, a difficult phone call, an unexpected challenge. In such moments, the natural instinct is to act immediately, but action taken while rooted in fear is seldom wise. So again, pause if only for a breath, if only for a heartbeat. Turn within long enough to recognize the presence goes before me. The Father within me doeth the works, and then act from that place. You will find clarity where confusion was, strength where weakness appeared, calm where agitation dominated, divine intelligence guiding instead of human effort striving. This is how the kingdom becomes practical. The 3-minute practice is not separate from life. It is the foundation upon which life is rightly lived. And as you return to this recognition throughout your day, briefly, quietly, sincerely, you begin to discover something extraordinary. You no longer live in the world as one threatened by it. You live through the world as one upheld by God. Fear loses its habit. Anxiety loses its momentum. Peace becomes the natural atmosphere of your consciousness. And now, having learned how to carry this recognition into everyday life, let us look at what begins to unfold when this becomes your consistent practice, not as discipline, but as the way you live, breathe, and respond to the world. And now, my friends, let us consider what begins to unfold, not because you have practiced long hours, not because you have mastered a technique, but simply because you have turned within consistently, quietly, sincerely, For spiritual transformation is never the result of human effort. It is the natural consequence of living in the recognition of truth. You do not make transformation happen. You allow it. Just as a flower opens not through effort, but by yielding to the sun, so does your consciousness unfold when you yield to the presence within. Let us look gently at the changes that arise when this simple turning becomes part of the rhythm of your life. 1. Anxiety loses its momentum. Anxiety is not a force. It is a habit of consciousness, a momentum born of believing that you are separate from your source. When you return to the kingdom daily, even for brief moments, you interrupt this momentum. You end the cycle of fear before it gathers strength. Gradually, you begin to notice that situations which once triggered immediate worry no longer have the same power. The mind still speaks, but you no longer listen with the same fear. The body may react, but something within you remains steady. This is not suppression. This is not positive thinking. This is truth-dissolving illusion. You discover that peace was never something you needed to create. It was always here, waiting to be recognized. 2, you become less reactive and more responsive. In the old consciousness, you reacted to appearances, money, health, relationships, circumstances, believing them to be causes. But through daily recognition of the kingdom, you begin to see that appearances are effects, and effects have no power. This produces a beautiful shift. Where you once reacted impulsively, you now respond consciously. Where you once defended, you now rest. Where you once judged, you now understand. Reaction belongs to fear. Response belongs to spirit. As the old reflex fades, your life becomes harmonious, not because circumstances have changed, but because consciousness has changed. 3. Decisions become clearer and simpler. When you turn within daily, you begin to feel the guidance of the presence, not as instruction, not as audible words, but as a quiet knowing, an inner direction that gently reveals the next step. Your decisions become less anxious, less calculated, less forced. You begin to sense when to act and when to wait. You feel when something is yours to do and when it is not. And as this guidance becomes your natural way, you realize that divine intelligence has been directing you all along. You simply had not been listening. 4. Relationships soften and deepen. As recognition of the kingdom becomes habitual, you begin to see others differently. You no longer look at personalities and histories. You begin to see the presence behind every face. This dissolves conflict. It ends resentment. It breaks cycles of misunderstanding. Love is not something you attempt to project. It is something that flows naturally when you see God where you once saw a person. Some relationships heal, some transform, some gently fade away, but all become harmonized because your consciousness is harmonized. 5. Supply begins to flow in unexpected ways, not through striving, not through manifesting, not through mental work, but because supply is a spiritual principle, and when you live in recognition of the kingdom, you stop blocking the flow with fear. Opportunities appear without effort. Solutions arrive before you seek them. Needs are met before they become problems. You realize that supply never came from the world. It came through the world from an invisible source that is infinite. 6. Health stabilizes as fear recedes. As you live daily in the awareness of the presence, the body begins to reflect the harmony of consciousness. Tension eases, symptoms loosen their grip, and fear, the great distorter of the body, no longer dictates your experience. You do not heal the body. You reveal the wholeness already present in spirit. Health is not gained. Health is uncovered. 7. A deep, quiet confidence begins to emerge. It is not confidence in yourself. It is not confidence in your abilities. It is confidence in the unchanging reality of God as your life. This confidence is silent. It does not boast. It does not assert. It simply rests. It is the confidence of knowing that no matter what appears, the kingdom stands behind it, within it, beneath it, as its only reality. 8. A new way of being takes root. Gradually, almost imperceptibly, you begin to live from the inside out. The world no longer dictates your state of mind. Circumstances no longer define your peace. You move through your days with an inner steadiness, a quiet awareness of the presence that accompanies you in every step. You become less concerned with outcomes and more aligned with truth. You cease striving. You cease resisting. You cease fearing. You begin to live, as Joel once described it, as a transparency for God. Nothing dramatic may happen outwardly. No one may see fireworks or miracles. But everything within you shifts. You begin to live the life that was always meant to be lived. A life governed not by the world, but by the kingdom within. And now that we have seen the transformation that unfolds through this consistent practice, let us turn to the final section where we bring this journey to its quiet completion. And so, my friends, we come to the close of this conversation not as a conclusion, but as a soft and continuous invitation. For spiritual realization does not end with a single practice, a single teaching, or a single moment of clarity. It unfolds gently, quietly, day by day, as you return again and again to the kingdom within. Do not imagine that you must hold yourself in some exalted state or maintain a constant sense of peace. That is not necessary. It is enough that you remember. It is enough that you pause. It is enough that you turn within for even a few breaths and acknowledge the presence that has never once left you. This is the essence of the infinite way, not striving for God, not seeking God, not calling upon God, but recognizing that God is already here, already functioning as the very life of your being. Every time you return to this recognition, you loosen the hold of fear. Every time you turn inward, you dissolve another layer of the illusion of separation. Every time you acknowledge the kingdom, you step into the truth that has been your home since before time began. You are not moving toward God. You are awakening to God already present. You are not improving the human self. You are remembering the divine self. You are not solving problems. You are recognizing that in the kingdom, no problem has reality. And so I say to you gently, do not evaluate your spiritual progress. Do not measure your experiences. Do not judge your practice. Simply continue. Continue turning within. Continue acknowledging the presence. Continue remembering that the kingdom is the foundation of your being. Some days you will feel peace. Some days you will feel nothing at all. Some days the mind will resist with great force. None of this matters, for the kingdom is not affected by your emotions. The presence is not diminished by mental noise. Truth is not altered by your temporary states. Every sincere turning, however small, opens the door a little wider. Every moment of recognition allows more light to enter. Every quiet acknowledgement strengthens your awareness of the one who goes before you, walks beside you, and lives as you. And gradually, without fanfare, without effort, without striving, you find yourself living more from the inside than from the outside, acting from peace rather than fear, listening rather than reacting, trusting rather than grasping, resting rather than resisting. This is the life the Master lived. This is the way of the infinite. This is your natural inheritance. And so we close, not with a final declaration, but with a simple remembrance. The kingdom of God is within you, not tomorrow, not when you are worthy, not when you are calm or perfect or spiritual. Now, always, eternally. Return to the kingdom whenever you think of it. Return when anxiety stirs. Return when joy appears. Return in silence, in activity, in stillness, in movement. There is no moment when the kingdom is absent. There is only the moment when you remember to look. And so I bless you, not with something given, but with the recognition of what has always been yours. The presence, the peace, and the infinite love that is your own true being.